Security moved first. Not toward the shouting investor. Not toward the collapsing model. Toward her. Zahra Adeyemi felt the shift before she saw it. The room tightening, bodies angling, eyes hardening. 1 second she was standing beneath crystal lights in a Barcelona gallery, her hand hovering over her own fabric on display. The next, 2 guards stepped into her space like she didn't belong there anymore. "Miss," one said, already reaching. That was when a man's voice cut through the room. "Step away from her." Low. Controlled. Untouchable. The guards froze. Every head turned. Matteo Calderon didn't raise his voice. He didn't rush. He simply walked forward, tailored suit immaculate, presence bending the air around him. Zahra had never seen him before, but she knew exactly who he was. Everyone did. His hand came down on her shoulder, not hard, not gentle. Possessive in a way that made her skin burn. "She's with me." The lie landed heavy. Zahra twisted out of his grip instantly. "I'm not with anyone," she said. Especially not men who think ownership sounds like protection. A few gasps. A few smiles from people who enjoyed danger when it wasn't aimed at them. Matteo studied her like a problem that refused to solve itself. "You're bleeding," he said. Only then did she notice the thin cut across her palm, fabric dye mixing with red. She wiped it on her dress without breaking eye contact. "So is this industry," she replied. "Yet you fund it." Silence swallowed the room. That was the moment people would talk about later. The moment Zahra Adeyemi became difficult. And the moment Matteo Calderon became interested. Before we go further, if you like stories where power gets challenged instead of worshipped, like this video now. And if you want stories that don't treat women like props or prizes, subscribe. You're going to want to see where this goes. 2 nights later, Zahra lay awake on a mattress that dipped in the middle, staring at a cracked ceiling fan. Barcelona hadn't softened for her. It had sharpened. Every rejection letter sounded polite. Every compliment came with a condition. Her work was bold, interesting, almost marketable, as long as she made it smaller. Quieter. Easier to digest. Lucia, her roommate, didn't bother pretending optimism anymore. "They don't hate you," she said from the kitchenette. "They just don't know what to do with someone they can't reshape." Zahra laughed once. Dry. Her phone buzzed. An email. She almost deleted it without opening, until she saw the header. Barcelona Fashion Conservatory. Her breath stalled. She read it twice. Then a 3rd time. Accepted. Fully funded. Immediate placement. Her hands shook. Then she scrolled. Funding source. Calderon Foundation. The room felt smaller. Lucia saw her face and frowned. "What?" Zahra handed her the phone. Lucia read it once. Then exhaled slowly. "Power never gives gifts," she said. "It gives leverage." Orientation day arrived dressed in marble and money. Zahra sat near the back, spine straight, jaw tight. She hadn't slept. She hadn't declined the offer either. When Matteo Calderon walked on stage as the conservatory's principal benefactor, applause filled the hall. Zahra didn't clap. He didn't look at her. That felt intentional. "Art," Matteo said calmly into the microphone, "should be protected from hunger, fear, and limitation." A pause. "But not from consequence." His eyes flicked to her then, brief, unreadable. Zahra felt it like a challenge. The first weeks were warfare disguised as opportunity. Access opened. Doors unlocked. People who ignored her before suddenly remembered her name. Matteo never approached her directly. Instead, resources appeared. Equipment. Private studio time. Invitations she didn't accept. Every yes felt like surrender. Every no felt like defiance she might pay for later. Then came the lockout. Zahra arrived after midnight, hands numb from cold, deadline screaming in her chest. Her access card failed once. Then again. She tried the door manually. Locked. Her designs, weeks of work, were inside. She sank onto the floor, back against steel, breath shaking for the first time since she'd arrived in Spain. A shadow fell across her. "You should have called," Mateo said. She didn't look up. "I don't call men who mistake proximity for permission." He crouched instead of standing over her. "That's fair," he said. "But tonight, you needed help." He unlocked the door. Didn't follow her in. That mattered. They ate street food on the curb like people who weren't supposed to intersect. Mateo didn't touch her work. Didn't ask questions. Finally, he said, "You don't trust me." Zahra swallowed. "You don't earn trust by funding it." He nodded once. "My mother left when I was 12, he said quietly. Control came later. It felt safer. Zahra looked at him then. Not softened, but listening. If you're still watching right now, comment power below. I want to know who's paying attention. And if you haven't subscribed yet, do it now. Because the next turn changes everything. The leak started 3 days later. Sketches appeared online. Her patterns. Her unfinished concepts. Stolen. And somewhere across the city, a woman who knew Mateo Calderon very well smiled at the screen. Zahra stood in her studio the next morning, staring at her work like it no longer belonged to her. Mateo arrived unannounced. This time, she didn't push him away. "Find who did this," she said. "Or I walk." For the first time, fear flickered across his face. Not losing control. Of losing her. Before the story continues. If you enjoy stories where power, love, and identity collide in uncomfortable ways, like this video now, it tells the algorithm this story deserves to be seen. And subscribe to the channel, because what begins as resistance in this chapter turns into something far more dangerous by the end. Now listen closely. Zahra Adeyemi didn't cry when she saw her stolen designs circulating online. She didn't scream. Didn't panic. She stood in the center of her studio, arms folded tightly against her chest, and watched strangers dissect her work like it belonged to no one. Comment sections praised the originality. Blogs speculated about the anonymous creator. A Paris buyer reposted one pattern with interest. Her name wasn't anywhere. That hurt more than theft. Across the city, Mateo Calderon watched the same images appear on his screen. And for the first time in years, rage didn't sharpen him, it unsettled him. Raphael stood quietly nearby, hands clasped behind his back. He had learned long ago that Mateo spoke best when no one interrupted. "This wasn't random," Mateo said finally. "This was personal." Raphael nodded. Someone had access. Mateo's jaw tightened. Access was currency. And currency always left fingerprints. The conservatory shifted overnight. People who once smiled too easily now avoided Zahra's gaze. Faculty meetings grew shorter when she entered rooms. A whispered phrase followed her down hallways. Problematic. Complicated. Risky. Lucia noticed it first. "They're bracing for fallout," she said one evening as Zahra stitched late into the night. "Institutions don't protect talent. They protect themselves." Zahra didn't answer. Her phone buzzed. Mateo. She stared at the screen longer than she meant to, then declined. 2 days later, Director Alvarez summoned her. His office smelled like polished wood and old decisions. "You've attracted attention," he said carefully. Zahra met his eyes. "That's what artists do." "Yes," he replied. "But artists without sponsors tend to disappear quietly." There it was. The warning disguised as concern. "You're asking me to disappear," she said. "I'm asking you to cooperate." "With who?" Alvarez hesitated just long enough. Zahra stood. "Tell your board," she said evenly, "that if my work survives only under silence, it was never freedom." She walked out before he could respond. If you're still here right now, subscribe. Because this next part isn't about fashion anymore. It's about leverage. Mateo confronted the conservatory board that same night. Not with threats. With absence. He withdrew funding from 2 auxiliary programs without explanation. Meetings were requested immediately. He declined all of them. Instead, He went to Zahra's studio. She didn't invite him in. "I told you," she said, standing in the doorway. "Find who did this, or I walk." "I'm close," he replied. "But you need to understand something." She folded her arms. "Here it comes. If you leave now," he said, "they'll bury you. Then let them try." His voice dropped. "You don't know how deeply some people resent being reminded they're replaceable." Zahra stared at him. "You're talking about yourself too, aren't you?" The truth landed between them. Mateo didn't deny it. Isabella Montoya watched everything from a distance. She always had. Mateo's control. His patterns. His weaknesses. She remembered when she used to be the center of them. Zahra Adeyemi wasn't a threat because she was talented. She was a threat because Mateo listened to her. And that had never happened before. The pressure intensified. A potential investor cornered Zahra after class. "You should consider aligning yourself with someone more stable," he said smoothly. "People like Calderon don't invest without expectations." Zahra smiled without warmth. "Neither do vultures." That night, someone locked her out of the studio again. This time, Mateo didn't come. Lucia did. They sat on the floor, backs against the wall, sharing cheap bread and quiet fear. "You could take the Paris repost and leave," Lucia said softly. Zahra shook her head. "I didn't come this far to be stolen from politely." If this story feels heavy, comment, "Still here" below. I want to know who stays when things stop being comfortable. And if you haven't subscribed yet, now is the time. Because the line between protection and possession is about to blur. Mateo finally uncovered the source. A shared server. Old credentials. Isabella. He didn't confront her immediately. That scared Raphael more than anger ever had. "She's provoking you," Raphael warned. Mateo stared at the city lights. "No. She's testing me." The confrontation happened at a private fundraiser. Isabella smiled when she saw Zahra beside Mateo. "Ah," she said lightly. "So you're the inspiration." Zahra met her gaze. "And you're the shadow." Mateo stepped between them. Isabella laughed. "You always choose battles you can't finish." "For the first time," Mateo replied, "I know exactly what I'm willing to lose." Isabella's smile faltered. Later that night, Zahra stood alone on her balcony, city humming below. Mateo joined her quietly. "I won't stop you if you leave," he said. "But I won't pretend neutrality either." She looked at him. "You don't get credit for learning late." "I know," he said. "I just don't want to learn without you." Silence stretched. Not romantic. Honest. Before we go on, if you're still here, subscribe to the channel now. This is where stories stop being entertaining and start being personal. Most people don't stay this deep. If you do, the ending will hit harder. Now listen. The night Zahra Adeyemi disappeared from the conservatory, the city did not pause for her. Barcelona never paused. Streetlights blinked on at their appointed hour. Traffic slid through familiar routes. Bars filled with laughter that didn't know anything had been taken away. The building itself, glass, steel, prestige, stood exactly as it always had. But Zahra's presence inside it was erased quietly, methodically, the way institutions remove what makes them uncomfortable. Her studio lights stayed off through the evening. Security logs showed no recorded exit. Her access card failed without warning, as if it had never belonged to her. By morning, the space that once carried her breath, her frustration, her ambition, stood hollow. The work table was bare. No sketches. No fabric samples folded with care. No pins stuck crookedly where her hands had rushed. Even the chair she always dragged closer to the window, gone. It looked less like she had left, and more like she had been removed. By late morning, the silence began to fill itself. "She quit," someone said near the lockers, casual, almost bored. "No, she was forced out," another whispered, voice sharpened by curiosity. "I heard Calderon paid her to disappear," someone else added, as if that made the story cleaner. Rumors moved faster than truth ever could. None of them were true. Zahra had not quit. She had not taken a deal. And she had not vanished by choice. The car ride away from the conservatory stretched longer than distance alone could explain. Traffic slowed. Red lights bled into wet asphalt. The city felt too alive for the quiet destruction happening inside her chest. Zahra sat in the back seat, posture rigid, hands clasped together until her fingers began to ache. She welcomed the pain. It anchored her to something real. Matteo Calderon sat across from her, immaculate as always. His suit unwrinkled. His expression composed. He hadn't touched her when he came for her. Hadn't raised his voice or issued an order. He'd stood in the doorway of her studio hours earlier and said quietly, urgently, "Come with me, now." And for the first time since she'd met him, there had been something beneath his control that unsettled her. Fear. "You could have explained," Zahra said eventually, breaking the silence. Matteo's eyes remained fixed on the road ahead. "I didn't have time." "That's your excuse for everything," she replied. "Urgency. Protection. Control." He didn't argue. The car veered toward the harbor district, away from the city's polished heart. Buildings grew rougher, half-finished, skeletal. Cranes stood frozen against the sky like monuments to abandoned ambition. They stopped beside an unfinished concrete structure. Exposed beams. Open floors. Wind slicing through hollow corridors. No guards. No cameras. The place felt deliberately unfinished. Zahra stepped out, pulling her coat tight as the cold cut through her. "Why am I here?" she asked. Matteo turned to face her fully. "Because someone is about to ruin you publicly," he said. "And I needed you to hear it before it happens." Inside, Raphael waited. He stood near a folding table covered with documents, his shoulders tense, his usual calm stripped away. Zahra understood before he spoke that this was no misunderstanding. "They're filing a complaint," Raphael said quietly. "Multiple ones. Cultural misrepresentation. Breach of collaborative ethics. Unauthorized use of shared institutional resources." Zahra stared at him. For a moment, her mind refused to cooperate. Then she laughed. Once. Sharp. Disbelieving. "That's absurd." "Yes," Raphael replied gently. "That's exactly why it will work." The words settled in her chest like wet cement. Matteo stepped forward. "I can stop it." Zahra turned on him instantly. "At what cost?" she demanded. He opened his mouth. Closed it. The silence answered for him. If that hesitation made your chest tighten, like the video, that moment matters. And if you're not subscribed yet, subscribe now. Because the story doesn't get kinder from here. Zahra walked out of the building without raising her voice. Her steps were controlled. Measured. Each one deliberate. Matteo didn't follow. That absence hurt more than any argument. The dismantling didn't come all at once. It came politely. Sponsors stopped responding to emails. Meetings were postponed without rescheduling. Conversations that once flowed easily turned stiff, formal, distant. The conservatory sent a single message. Access suspended pending internal review. No explanation. No defense. No timeline. Online, the theft evolved into something more dangerous. Her designs, now stripped of her name, appeared credited to someone else. A newer designer. A safer face. A story that fit better. Zahra watched a runway livestream on a borrowed phone, her patterns moving under lights she wasn't allowed beneath. Applause filled the room. Her stomach turned. Lucia found her that night sitting on the floor, back against the bed, eyes unfocused. "Say something," Lucia whispered. Zahra shook her head slowly. If she spoke, everything she'd been holding back would spill out, and she wasn't ready to fall apart yet. Matteo Calderon faced the board 2 days later. The men across from him wore calm-like armor. "You're overreaching," one of them said evenly. "No," Matteo replied. "I'm withdrawing." The room shifted. Funding froze. Partnerships stalled. Alliances weakened. But power, real power, has edges. And Mateo had reached them. Isabella Montoya visited him that night. She moved through his space like memory, familiar and unwelcome. "You look tired," she observed. "She's changing you." "She exposed me," Mateo replied. Isabella smiled faintly. "And you hate her for it." He didn't respond. "You don't love her," she continued. "You fear losing what you can't cage." Mateo's voice was flat. "Get out." She paused at the door. "You'll choose eventually," she said softly. "You always do." Zahra packed at dawn. Paris had followed her quietly, not with promises, but with interest. A studio space. Temporary. Conditional. It wasn't victory. It was survival. Mateo learned from Raphael. "She's leaving," Raphael said. Mateo closed his eyes. "Good," he replied. The word tasted like a lie. If you're still watching, comment, "Don't leave." This is the point of no return. And if you haven't subscribed yet, do it now. The reckoning is coming. The confrontation happened in the rain. Barcelona didn't soften it. It sharpened it. "You're letting them erase me," Zahra said, voice trembling. "I'm trying to keep you alive in a system that doesn't forgive," Mateo replied. "You don't get to decide how I survive." Silence crashed between them. "I don't know how to love without controlling," he admitted. "And I hate myself for that." Zahra stepped back. "Then don't love me," she said quietly. "Because I won't disappear to make you feel safe." She turned away. Mateo didn't stop her. That night he broke. Not loudly. Not dramatically. Alone. Raphael found him hours later, sitting in the dark. "You did the right thing," Raphael said. Mateo laughed bitterly. "No," he replied. "I did the familiar thing." Zahra boarded the train at sunrise. Barcelona slipped away without ceremony. She didn't look back. Before we finish this story, subscribe to the channel now. Because this is not just an ending, it's a reckoning. And if you've ever had to choose between love and freedom, like this video so the algorithm pushes stories like this to more people. Now listen. Paris didn't welcome Zahra Adeyemi. It evaluated her. The city didn't clap because she arrived with talent. It didn't care that Barcelona had tried to erase her. It didn't care that her hands were still sore from sewing through nights she couldn't afford to sleep. Paris looked at her like a question. And questions, she learned quickly, could be crueler than rejection. The studio she was given was not a studio in the way people imagined when they said the word with admiration. It was a narrow room above a bakery with a ceiling that sloped like it was tired of standing. The window was small. The radiator hissed like an insult. The table wobbled until she shoved folded cloth beneath one leg to stop it from betraying her. Temporary. Conditional. Replaceable. That was what the contract really meant. Zahra read every line twice, then signed anyway. Because survival wasn't romantic. It was practical. Lucia had offered to come with her for the first week, but Zahra had refused. Not because she didn't want comfort, but because she needed proof, solid proof, that she could exist in a new city without folding herself into someone else's shadow. The first morning, she walked through Paris with her chin lifted, even though she felt small. At a cafe near the studio, she ordered coffee with an accent the server pretended not to understand. The second time she repeated herself, the server rolled her eyes and answered in English like it was charity. Zahra took the coffee without flinching. Back in Barcelona, that would have made her angry. Here, it made her focused. She went back upstairs, opened her suitcase, unfolded her fabric, and began again. Not with hope, with discipline. On her second day, she received a message from an unknown number. "Mateo, I'm not asking you to come back. I just needed you to know, I finally learned how to stand still." She stared at the screen for a long time. It wasn't an apology. It wasn't a plea. It wasn't a demand. That alone made it dangerous. Because it sounded like someone who had stopped trying to win and started trying to be real. Zahra didn't reply. She put the phone face down like it had teeth and returned to her work. But the room felt different. Not warmer. Just less quiet. If you're still here, comment, finish it, below. Because the ending you're about to hear is earned. And if you haven't subscribed yet, subscribe now. This is where the story turns from pain into choice. The first week in Paris was humiliation disguised as opportunity. A stylist visited the studio and ran her fingers along Zahra's fabric like she was testing a cheap knockoff. Interesting, the woman said. The texture is strong. But the patterns could be less intense. Intense. That was a word people used when they meant too much. Zahra forced a smile. The patterns are the point. Yes, the stylist said, as if speaking to a child. But the market prefers what it can wear without explaining. Without explaining. Meaning. Without identity. The stylist left. The door shut. Zahra stood still for a full minute, staring at the space where the woman had stood. Her hands curled into fists. Then she breathed out and went back to the table. She didn't soften her patterns. She sharpened them. If Paris wanted her smaller, it could choke. Mateo Calderon, meanwhile, was learning what it meant to exist without control. Back in Barcelona, he had always been surrounded by systems that responded to his will. A call made, an email sent, a door opened, a problem removed. His life had been arranged like a board game where he never lost pieces he cared about. Now, his decisions echoed into empty rooms. He stepped down from committees with polite letters no one expected him to write. He withdrew from 2 boards and watched people who once nodded eagerly suddenly tilt their heads in confusion. Power didn't like silence. It needed performance. And Mateo was refusing to perform. Raphael watched him from the doorway of his office one evening. "You're letting them think you're unstable," Raphael said carefully. Mateo didn't look up. "Let them. They'll replace you." Mateo finally met his gaze. "I know." The words landed with surprising calm. Raphael studied him like he was trying to see if this was courage or collapse. "Is this about her?" Raphael asked. Mateo's jaw tightened. "Everything is about her now." "That's dangerous," Raphael warned. Mateo exhaled. "So was the way I loved her." Weeks passed. Zahra sent work samples to 3 houses and received 2 rejections that sounded kind and 1 silence that screamed. The silence was worse. On the nights she couldn't sleep, she scrolled through old images, runways, fabrics, sketches. Her stolen designs still out there, still credited to someone else. Occasionally, she'd search her name and find nothing. No mention. No credit. No outrage. Erasure didn't happen with violence. It happened with indifference. One night, her hands shook as she threaded a needle. She dropped it on the table and stared at it, breathing hard. Lucia called at that exact moment. "How are you?" Lucia asked. Zahra laughed once. "I'm alive." "That's not an answer." Zahra leaned her head against the wall. "I'm tired of being the brave one," she admitted. "I'm tired of making pain look like art." Lucia's voice softened. "Then stop. Rest." Zahra swallowed. Rest felt like surrender. And surrender felt like dying. "I can't," she whispered. There was silence. Then Lucia said, "Then promise me you won't disappear. Even if they try to make you." Zahra closed her eyes. "I promise," she said. "If that line hit you like the video. Because this is the kind of story that stays with you. And if you're new here, subscribe. I'm not dropping shallow stories on this channel." The first real crack in Paris came in the 3rd week. A buyer arrived unexpectedly. Older, quiet, with eyes that looked like they had seen too many trends. He didn't praise her. He didn't flatter her. He simply asked, "Why these patterns?" Zahra froze for a second. No one asked why. They asked how to sell. How to soften. How to market. "Because my mother used to fold fabric like she was folding stories," Zahra said slowly. "Because where I'm from, women don't wear patterns to decorate. They wear them to speak." The buyer nodded. "And who taught you to speak like this?" he asked. Zahra hesitated. She could have said Barcelona. The conservatory. Training. International influence. But that would have been the lie institutions wanted. My grandmother, she said. She didn't read books. She read people. She taught me how to stitch anger into beauty. The buyer sat down. He watched her work in silence for nearly 30 minutes. When he stood to leave, he didn't promise anything. But he said one sentence before he walked out. Don't make yourself smaller. Zahra stared at the closed door long after he left. For the first time in weeks, she felt something shift. Not relief. Permission. Matteo heard about Zahra's small Paris showcase through a third-party newsletter. He reread the announcement 3 times. Her name, printed cleanly. Her work, credited correctly. No mention of scandal. No mention of Barcelona. Just talent, standing alone. Raphael found him holding the phone like it was fragile. She's moving forward, Raphael said softly. Matteo nodded once. He should have felt relief. Instead, he felt grief. Because her moving forward didn't require him. And if love was real, he had to learn to celebrate that. Even if it left him empty. Isabella Montoya did not celebrate. She arrived at Matteo's home unannounced, dressed perfectly, smiling too calmly. I saw her name, she said, drifting into the room like she still belonged there. Paris is forgiving. Barcelona isn't. Matteo didn't offer her a seat. You're still watching her? He asked. Isabella smiled. Of course. She's the most interesting thing you've ever done. Matteo's eyes hardened. Leave, he said. Isabella stepped closer. You think stepping away makes you noble? It doesn't. It makes you weak. And weak men get eaten. Matteo's voice stayed low. You're the one who's hungry. Isabella's smile tightened. You loved me once, she said. No, he replied. I possessed you. There's a difference. The words stunned even him. Isabella's eyes flashed. You'll regret choosing her, she hissed. Because she'll never belong to you. Matteo's answer was quiet. I know. Isabella stared. For the first time, she looked unsure. Then she turned and walked out. The door closed behind her. Matteo stood still, breathing slowly, like he had just survived something. Raphael spoke from the hallway. That was the first time I've ever heard you say that. Matteo didn't look at him. It was the first time I believed it, Matteo said. If you've ever watched someone change in a way you didn't expect, even yourself, comment, growth, below. And subscribe if you want stories where people don't magically heal overnight. The invitation to Barcelona Fashion Week came without fanfare. Independent showcase. Limited slots. Invitation extended to Zahra Adeyemi. When she read the email, her fingers went cold. Barcelona. The city that had tried to delete her. The city that carried Matteo's shadow in every expensive corridor. She stared at the screen, then closed her laptop. For an hour, she didn't move. Then she opened it again. Read it again. And booked her ticket. Not because she wanted revenge. Because she refused to leave unfinished sentences behind her. She arrived in Barcelona on a Thursday. The air smelled the same as it always had. Sea salt, perfume, and money pretending it was innocent. Lucia met her at the station and wrapped her in a hug that lasted longer than politeness allowed. I missed you, Lucia murmured. Zahra swallowed. I missed breathing without weight. Lucia pulled back to look at her. Are you ready? Zahra didn't pretend confidence. No, she said. But I'm coming anyway. Matteo didn't know she was back. That was intentional. Zahra didn't want him as an anchor. Not this time. On the day of the show, she arrived early and moved through the backstage area like a surgeon preparing for a procedure. She checked stitching. Adjusted hems. Smoothed fabric. Her hands were steady. Her heart was not. The room buzzed with nervous energy. Designers, stylists, assistants. Some looked at her with curiosity. Others recognized her and looked away quickly, as if association could stain them. Zahra ignored them all. Then she saw him. Matteo stood at the far end of the hall, not surrounded by people, not commanding the center. Just present, quiet, almost invisible. That alone felt like a different man. Their eyes met. Matteo didn't move. He didn't step closer. He didn't reach out. The restraint startled her more than control ever had. Zahra walked toward him slowly. "I didn't know you'd be here," she said. Matteo's voice was careful. "I didn't know you'd come." A beat of silence. "I'm not staying long," Zahra said. Matteo nodded. "I won't ask you to." Again, no demand. Zahra studied him. "What changed?" she asked quietly. Matteo exhaled. "I got tired of confusing fear with love," he said. "And I got tired of hurting you to calm myself." Zahra's throat tightened. Matteo's eyes didn't flinch. "I used to think love meant holding on," he continued. "Now I know it means letting someone choose you, or walk away." Zahra watched him carefully, as if waiting for the hidden clause. "And if I walk?" she asked. Matteo's voice softened, not pleading, just real. "Then I'll still be proud of you." The words landed hard. Because they didn't center him. They centered her. That was the difference. If you're still watching right now, subscribe. Because this is the type of emotional payoff most stories skip. And you'll want the next ones. The show began. Lights rose. Music surged. The first model stepped onto the runway wearing Zahra's work. The fabric moved like water. The patterns spoke like language. People leaned forward. Then they started filming. Whispers spread. Not about scandal. Not about controversy. About talent. About presence. About a woman who refused to be erased. Zahra watched from backstage, her arms folded tightly, not because she was cold, but because she was holding herself together. When the final look walked, applause didn't trickle. It hit. Hard. For a second, Zahra couldn't breathe. Lucia grabbed her hand. "Go," she whispered. Zahra stepped out at the end, head lifted. She didn't smile widely. She didn't perform gratitude like a desperate beggar. She simply stood and let them see her. Then she walked backstage, heart pounding. She looked for Matteo. He wasn't clapping loudly. He wasn't calling attention to himself. He was just watching her with something that looked like respect. Not hunger. Not possession. Respect. After the show, Zahra found him near a quiet corridor. Matteo spoke first. "You did it," he said. Zahra didn't soften. "I did it without you." Matteo nodded once. "I know." The honesty in his face made her chest ache. "I'm opening a boutique," Zahra said. "Not only in Paris. Here too. Somewhere between cultures. Somewhere I control." Matteo's eyes stayed steady. "I'll support it," he said. "From whatever distance you need." Zahra stared at him. "You're really doing it," she murmured. "You're letting go." Matteo's voice was quiet. "I'm trying," he said. "And I'll fail sometimes. But I'll keep trying." Zahra looked away for a second, blinking hard. Then she looked back. "And if I stay," she said slowly, "you don't get to call it fate." Matteo's mouth twitched, almost a smile. "No," he said. "If you stay, it's because you chose it." Time passed. Not in a montage. In arguments and repairs. In boundaries set and respected. In moments where Matteo's old instincts surfaced, and he swallowed them instead of acting. In moments where Zahra's fear of being trapped rose, and she spoke it instead of running. They were not perfect, but they were awake. And being awake was harder than being dramatic. 1 year later, they walked into a gallery together. Not as a man with a claim and a woman under his coat. As equals. Their pace matched. Their silence didn't feel tense anymore. It felt shared. Zahra's boutique had opened. First in Paris, then in Barcelona. Not huge. Not corporate. Intentional. A place where fabrics carried language again. Matteo had stepped away from performative philanthropy. He funded quietly now. Without attaching his name like a chain. They had fought. They had failed. They had forgiven without forgetting. And in that slow, imperfect trying, something real had formed. In the middle of the gallery, Matteo stopped. He didn't kneel dramatically. He didn't gather an audience. He simply reached into his pocket and pulled out a small box. Zahra's body tensed instinctively. Matteo saw it and paused. Then he opened the box. Inside wasn't a ring. It was a key. Zahra blinked. "To nothing that belongs to me," Matteo said quietly. "Just a door. If you ever want it." Zahra stared at the key like it was heavier than metal. A door could be a cage. Or it could be a choice. She closed her fingers around it. Her voice came out soft. "I choose you," she said. "Not because I need you. Because I want to walk beside you." Matteo's breath shook as he released it. Not relief like victory. Relief like survival. "I won't be perfect," he whispered. Zahra's eyes stayed steady. "Neither will I." Matteo nodded. And then, only then, he offered the second box. A ring. Simple. Clean. No diamonds shouting. A promise, not a purchase. Zahra looked at it for a long moment. Then she held out her hand. Matteo slid it on carefully, like he understood he was touching something sacred. And the question that lingered as the lights dimmed wasn't romantic. It was honest. Can love exist without ownership? And if it can, why are so many terrified to try? If this story stayed with you, subscribe. More intense stories are coming. Stories that don't glamorize control and don't insult your intelligence. And if you felt anything at all, drop a comment. Because I read them. And I build the next story with your reactions in mind.